Well, hi, Jonathan. Welcome to the Finite Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm excited to talk to you today about growing and leading a team. I know you have a lot of experience with that, with your current role at Penji and your founding story there. So I can't wait to hear more about that. But before we get into it, I'll let you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into marketing and building your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Jonathan, one of the co-founders of Penji. But first and foremost, before I'm all of that, I have a 6-month-old. So the first thing I am before an entrepreneur is a father, is a husband, and then I'd say is like a business owner. That's third in my hierarchy of life. I've never had a real job. I've only done entrepreneurship and started my business when I was 20 something years old. Never worked for corporate America. Um, my co-founder and I started our business as a digital marketing agency, and we sucked at being a digital marketing agency. And slowly but surely, through trial and error, we created a business called Penji that is a creative subscription service that powers thousands of companies across the world. And we deliver creative to businesses on a monthly basis as much as they need it. It's essentially a great way, the easiest and the most simplest way to hire a creative for your business. And as soon as you hire Penji, you can receive deliverables in under 24 hours. Um, that is the TLDR of my life, I'd say, as a business owner. And we can start there as the foundation.
Yeah, awesome. Nice and snappy. I'm I really love that you preface this conversation with the fact that you are a husband and father first. Definitely strong family values there, and I'd love to see how those strong values maybe impact your strategy as a leader.
Yeah, possibly. I never really thought about that, but I'll be transparent and honest with you. Is when I first started, I didn't give a crap about family. Um, just to be honest, I didn't, because it wasn't important to me when I first started. I was 22, 23 years old, and I don't think anybody that's 22, 23 really has a sense of anything in life. And there are so many times in my early 20s and mid to late 20s that I didn't put a preface on family. I missed birthdays strategically because I was focusing on the business. I was trying to do tasks. And then now looking back 10 plus years later, I truly have no idea what I did during those times. And anything that I did during those times are completely not valuable, just to be honest with you. Um, but as I grew older and I learned my sense of value in this world, I did start to put an emphasis on family. And I think some of that is true. It could be true that that's how the leadership aspects come into play. But I just think genuinely now, I I've always cared about people, but I think I have an emphasis on caring more than I did once before.
Awesome. Just to clarify, were you 22 when you started Penji?
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah. It
great.
wasn't called Penji at the time, but
Oh,
it was what Penji is today. Yeah, it was a digital marketing agency called Waterfront Media. Um, Prior to that, I started a lawn mowing company, like a landscaping company at 16, 15, 16. And I was making like $2,000 a month, which is pretty awesome for a 15-year-old. And then I moved, and then I started a company called Pan Fried Media. That I did social media marketing for restaurants. And again, I was terrible at that. And then my business partner and I, we came together and we met, and then we created a company called Waterfront Media. And that company more or less failed within 2-3 years. And then we came up with the idea of building subscription based model of for our business. And then that's more or less what Penji came to be.
okay. So through that story, I'm sensing definitely entrepreneurial values, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Um, so today we're going to be talking about growing and leading a team. I think that puts an interesting spin on it, actually, knowing that you were so young when you did this for your businesses. And I'd love to hear more about the mindset and lessons learned. Any regrets, any challenges along the way that you had when you were building out the Penji team? Now, our listeners are marketers. So I don't know if you were only in marketing or if you were across the business, which is much more likely. Um, but I would love to know how you kind of mapped out team structure at the very beginning, how you knew whether to hire generalists, specialists, which functions, beyond the basics. And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just based on whatever fire is out at the time. Um, the the first thing is I was the salesperson for close to 5, 10, yeah, like between 5 to 10 years, right? I was the only salesperson, so we never hired anybody in sales. I did all the sales. I closed the deals. I brought in all the bacon, so to speak. And so the first infrastructure was, how can I explain this to make it as easy as possible? I say the first hires were the graphic designers, right? We had internal team members that were really good at graphic design. And then that person became overloaded, and then we hired more designers, and then that person became overloaded and we hired more designers. And then from there, then we started hiring a manager to hire the designers. um, and it wasn't up until maybe a couple of years or so ago we actually started hiring more. Well, maybe like 5 to 6, 7 years, 5 to 6 years or so ago, we started hiring like marketing positions and like growing the business, right? uh, and scaling. So in the
mm,
first like 2, 3 years, there was no scaling at all. It was accidental scaling. We were just trying to survive. Uh, my co-founder is a technical founder, so he does a lot of the development aspects, and he's very well versed in that aspect. And so while we were figuring out the scalability aspects, we created technology to support the scalability. So now we're able to communicate with our customers in an easier fashion because of the technology that we built behind Penji. So if it wasn't for that technology arm, we probably wouldn't be able to scale, to be honest with you, because we'd be using outdated services like, email and maybe Trello or something like that. But in the very beginning, it was just like the demand for the business. It was help the customer, help the customer, help the customer. Then a manager to help the designers, and then a manager to help the customers, because you can't have the designers talking to the customers. So I'd say within the first 2, 3 years, we probably had teams of like 5 to 10 people, and then a manager for each of those. And then we kind of like blocked like 10. The numbers were 10 and 1, 10 and 1, 10 and 1. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay. Um, and we probably did that for several years.
Mm,
And then again, it wasn't up until maybe 5-ish years when we really started to be more strategic, and we started doing math in order to find out, well, actually 10 isn't the number. It's like 25, or it's like 50. And then 50 people can be managed by one person. And now we're at a place in our business where we're kind of scientific in the aspects where it's like it's a math. It's like 25 people is the max. One person can hire, and then you move on to other departments, and we're using that same logic, and we're constantly removing and replacing. So there's no science to it right now. We're still not perfect, but we're a lot better and more versed than what we were in the very beginnings of the business.
mm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because your company is a very unique mix of like service led people are the product kind of
Correct.
versus technology and SaaS and making those people available. Was that always the case? Did you always mean for it to be a technology company?
Yeah, I think so. We were the first in our industry to have proprietary software. And now everybody has more or less tried to copy us. And that's been like the biggest driver of our success. But to answer the question about, is it like, we're kind of a blend of both people and technology, especially with the growing age of AI. We want to be a people focused company. We are better than freelance platforms because with other freelance platforms, you don't know who you're talking to and you don't know if they're a good person. Um, you can hire somebody right now on an outside website and they could be a mass murderer for all you know, right? You probably don't care. And I'm not saying that they are, because these other platforms do have really good people too. So I'm not being generalized in that aspect. But it's kind of nice to be able to know that the person that you're working with comes from a good background, has been vetted, has gone through a string of tests to verify that they're really good at their job. And that's what Penji does. So we hire the top 2% of talent in the world because of the amount of people that apply to their positions, to our positions, and the amount of people that we actually select based on our hiring process. So if you work
Interesting.
with Penji, you're working with what we believe is a top talent. Um, Now, obviously, some people would disagree with that, and that's fine because not all designers are equal. But at least we verify that they're good people. And if you were to go on our reviews and you were to read about who Penji is, you'll see that every single review is written by our customers, because at the end of the day, we may not be perfect, but at least they know that we give a crap about them. And as a person in both sales and customer support and customer experience, that's all I care about. Is
Mm.
we don't have to deliver like the best logo. We just have to make them believe and make them feel that their work matters and that we did whatever we could to support them as best as we can.
Hmm. Yeah, you raised an interesting point about AI, and I'm sensing your kind of stance on that being people led, and people offer a more like full service um, product and design that is really kind of tailored to the customer's needs. How like threatened do you feel by AI and image generators and agencies turning to AI, especially in the UAE and stuff, to make full campaigns?
Great. It's awesome. Am I threatened by it? Not particularly. I do think that we should be aware of it, but all of our designers use AI. And if you were to use AI right now, and even if you were to use AI tomorrow, and if this podcast doesn't come out for another 2 years, you could use AI then too, and it'll be much better and smarter than what it is right now. But I promise you, in order for that to happen, you still need a human being in order to put in the prompt.
Yeah.
So, and regardless of whatever the prompt comes back, you're still going to have to make modifications and edits. There's always going to be the need of having somebody to do it yourself, or do it for you. So you have a choice whether you want to hire somebody in house, or you want to hire a service like ours, or you want to do it yourself. So there's always going to be that balance, right? There's going to be those people, those marketers, maybe similar to yourself, where you don't have the technical skills to do it, and you don't have the attention or the time to actually submit these prompts. So then just have somebody else do it for you. It's no different than doing, like, right now I'm having yard work done in my house, right? I could do it myself, but I don't have the time to do it. So I'd rather pay somebody in order to do it for me because I need the help. There's no difference in technology, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take. It's almost like they're in different categories and they're servicing different needs. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. And we only want to talk to the people that, like, if you have a stance on AI, and AI is like the future, is going to eliminate creative jobs. Okay, you're not our customer. So like, I'll talk to you. I'll have an intelligent conversation. I'll be respectful, but like, I'm not going to sell you on Penji. Just be like,
Yeah.
okay, man, that's cool that you have that opinion. That's nice. Um, but I'm not going to go into my sales pitch in order to win your business.
Mm. It does almost feel like the proponents of like AI taking over are the loudest, but there are many, many more, likely a majority of people who don't think that.
Yeah. I'd say a large majority of people that are afraid of that are the people who are probably not skilled enough to do their job effectively. If I could be honest, that's nothing against that person, but if you're really that afraid of it, then you probably should reflect about your own skill sets and abilities, and you should probably read a book, or you should probably go back to school, or you should probably earn a new skill or teach yourself something, because I can almost promise you that you're lacking in some aspects. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I can see that. We're going back to kind of Psych 101, like insecurity and projection. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying that like you're dumb or like, the people that do it are stupid. They're not. But it's just like if you're projecting that level, you have an identity crisis of some sorts, in my opinion. And it's okay that you have that. Everybody goes through it at different times. I have it myself all the time. Like I'm not qualified to do what I'm doing right now. I have no background. On paper, I have no skills. I don't even have a job. I don't even have a resume. So how am I qualified to do what I'm doing right now? I'm not.
It's all about self-perception, I guess. I
Yeah.
do wanna kind of use that as a lever to get back on track with our conversation. I've loved where this is going, and I'm sure we can come around to it and go off on different tangents as well. But if you don't believe in hard skills, if it's all soft skills based, it's not even experience, you don't even have a resume, how are you judging the people that you hire?
Sure. Numbers. Numbers don't lie. So I love every single person that we hire. I love every single person that I work with. But at the end of the day, you're based on numbers. And if you don't hit numbers, then who am I? How am I going to judge you if I can't judge you on that? So 5 minutes before this conversation, I had a conversation with our salespeople and said, this is what needs to be done. And I gave them a list of the things that need to be met, and I gave them a set of rules that they need to abide by and follow. And if these rules are not met, um, we will respectfully have to go our separate ways. And it's not numbers to the point where it's like, oh, well, this guy's being an a-hole, right? These are obtainable numbers that you should easily be able to do if you do your job well. And even if you do your job moderately well, you could still hit the numbers. So it's up to you to figure that out. And if you don't hit it, then why would you want to work with somebody in the first? Like, imagine rowing a boat, right? And you have to get across the sea. And then this one dude or gal is right next to you and they're not pulling their weight. Why do you want to work with them? Forget who's at the head. Forget who's at the head of the boat, right? Let's just assume that there's nobody at the head. And it's just five people rowing a boat. If one person is lacking, why do you want them on your boat? So I don't position myself as like God, like some people do. Um, I'm just very objective about the leadership. My leadership style is very fair, I'd say. And I can confirm that is fair because I've asked my team for feedback, and they do so, both anonymously and direct. And if I make it about numbers, how can you argue with it? If I don't like you, then that's a different story. But if you base everything off of numbers, they don't lie, and you have to respect the numbers. So I
Yeah.
would say whatever, if you're a leader listening to this, you should try and find a way to quantify every aspect of the business from a number standpoint to be able to get that person to become obsessed with that particular goal, and then let them do whatever it takes in order to obtain that. So if they're a customer success person, their job should probably be, how can you upgrade the account? If they are a salesperson, they need to figure out how to get a certain percentage of conversion rates. If they're an outreach person, their numbers should be based on the response rate. So you shouldn't necessarily be focused on like, well, what script do you need to use? No, let them do that. And if they fail, then you find somebody else in order to replace them. The same rules that apply to designers. If a customer doesn't like working with you, it's not me firing you. You're firing yourself because nobody wants to work with you. So we try to make it as numerical as possible and leave little chance to emotion so we don't make emotional decisions in affecting somebody's life, because this is somebody's like life. This is their salary. Like, I don't want to screw that up. But if they screw it up, that's on them. And I deserve that as well. If I suck at my job, I don't deserve to be working at Penji.
Cool. I think that's an interesting take. I do think that metrics are objective. If a whole team has got the same the same goal and some hit it and some don't, then that's kind of an objective reason to um, either keep them or leave them. I know that in marketing, I feel like metrics can actually be one of the more subjective things, because whilst numbers are objective, setting those numbers is all subjective, depending on the depth of your analytics, and your experience in the business, and what works.
What
But to
example comes to
deciding,
mind? I'm just curious. When you said that,
yeah,
what
sure.
example?
Pipeline revenue, if it's down to sales to convert, and you likely convert one third of your pipeline revenue, um, you would expect the marketing to deliver three times that revenue. But that depends on customer quality, lead scoring, loads and loads of different things in the process that impact that pipeline revenue number. So I do think it is a little bit harder to set marketing metrics. Would you agree, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, so when you say marketing, you mean like somebody in marketing is delivering a prospect to a closer? Is that more or less what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's always different ways of doing it. Some
Yeah.
marketing looks after the entire pipeline right to close.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's say there's like a traditional handoff to sales.
Yeah. And you're saying that the quality, like, it's harder to have that metric in the beginning, or is it's harder to do it at the end?
I would say at the beginning for marketing side,
Yeah,
uh,
I would agree.
because yeah,
I would agree. I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I think the outreach process is extremely difficult to find and qualify leads. But I think I would argue that maybe the person that's doing it doesn't understand the customer profile as much as they probably should. Like, for Penji, we know exactly who to go after based on our numbers and based on our customer base. And we also know who stays on the longest and what type of person that is, right? Like, so we know the job title, we know the type of business, we know how many people that are in their business. Like, we know those numbers, not 100%, but like, we have a good understanding and a customer profile. So what I found personally is that if the worst types of leads that an outreach person obtains is based on not following the guidelines of what your perfect customer profile is. And I think a lot of times businesses, they go after everyone because they just like need money, right? Especially if you're a new business. But the more strategic bit, like IBM, right? IBM has like 4 customers. Do you think they care about anybody else except for those 4 customers? No, like, they know their customers, they know how to go after them. So they stay in their lane and they focus. And I would say that, like, if you're a small business, focus on one industry. If you are a big business, I would break your business down into multiple departments and have salespeople outreach based on the industry or the category or whatever that may be. And I think if you want to sell, you need to sell. If you sell a SaaS product, right? Then you should have like a department of sales, even if it's the same person that goes after fintech SaaS companies, or another department that goes after um creative services like ours. I don't know, but I personally believe that when you sell, you should sell directly to the person based on the problem that they're having. And if you're having a hard time getting those people, I'd say that your problem might be too broad, that you're trying to solve, and that you need to be more specific with the broad. Like, we don't solve a graphic design problem. On paper, it looks like that if you go onto the website, but that's not the problem that we're solving. We're solving the problem for agencies that their internal team is too busy or overloaded with work and therefore need extra help, right? And then for a small business owner, the problem that we're solving is they're doing it all themselves and they don't want to continue doing it themselves, and they're having a hard time finding other people to do it for them. Therefore, Penji is a great solution for that. So, like, those are two completely different people that we cater to, but two completely different problems that we're trying to solve. And then when we're trying to solve that problem, we use that verbiage in our sales tactics in order to ensure that we're providing the right solution for them.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think you're honing in on a very, very key message in that marketing needs a strategy. Marketing needs you need your product market fit and you need your customer profile. And that seems to be something that many businesses struggle with, especially in the beginning when you don't have a lot of data and you don't have a lot of opportunity to outreach to everyone. And there's no outliers for whoever is buying your products, and it can be hard to know where to point your finger. If you can remember back to when Penji was first investing in marketing, what were some of those things that you looked at? How did you kind of find that direction?
Podcasting. I That's why I love going on podcasts, because that's the foundation of how Penji started. We gave people gave idiots like me a platform, and once you give somebody a platform to talk about themselves, they'll usually remember you forever. And then they're usually indebted to you because you shared their story to your audience, even if, like, in full transparency, I have no idea how large your audience is. It could be 1 billion people, but it could be four. You know, I don't know. But I genuinely care about your platform, and I want to be able to provide, because you invested all the time that you have in your podcast, in this podcast. I want to do my best to serve you as best as I possibly can. And usually, in the beginning of our marketing efforts in the business, we interviewed a ton of people on a podcast, again, very similar to this, and then we converted them into customers, or at least friends. If not customers, at least friends. And then they became advocates for the business. And then from there, they shared our content, and then they became customers, advocates, friends of the business. And then we just kind of grew from there. I think I had like 350 interviews before I kind of shut it down and I became too busy with things. Um, that was number one. And then number two would be content creation. Uh, we've done a lot of SEO and social media that allowed us the ability to grow from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's not a lot of marketers that I've had on the podcast that say that they kind of had a brand led strategy right from the start of their marketing. There's a lot of usually barriers and processes in place to kind of get like an enterprise level marketing function up and running from scratch. But I can't agree more that branding is everything, to be honest,
Well,
especially in this day and age where everything is changing. All the algorithms are changing every day.
Well, it wasn't, to be fair. it wasn't actually a branding strategy. It just became that. Um, it was more less storytelling, and it was just, hey, create a good story that people care about you, and then just figure it out from there. So then it turned into a brand.
Mm.
But like, if you go into the business and the marketing strategy thinking that you're going into it like to create a brand immediately, I'd say you're very misguided in that aspect. I think you should just focus on telling stories, and then eventually it turns into something, if anything at all. It may not turn into anything, or it might turn into something absolutely stunning and beautiful.
Mm.
Which, you know, with your bit with the business that you have and the podcast, it's very much so like the branding is there because of the community aspect of what you do in your business, and then the community aspect of what's being done in the podcast is very much so like intertwined. So it makes sense that you have the digital world meet the physical world. And then I would say very similar to that aspect as Penji as well.
Mm. Okay, I can see where the sales side of things comes in there, because sales is very much storytelling as well, I guess, and it's like kind of just creating that en masse.
I would agree.
Great. So, we're coming to the last question of the episode, and I just want to finish off with a kind of all rounder. We've been here, there, and everywhere on this in this discussion. So, just to tie it all together, I'd love to get maybe one insight or tip to people, marketers, business leaders, people growing their team, and leading a team. Like, what is the one thing that they should think about when they're creating like team synergy and helping to kind of create momentum?
Yeah. Communication is everything. Write it down, whatever it is that you're trying to convey to your team. Write it down, put it into a Notion board, or put it into an email or a Slack message, and then immediately have a call directly after that conversation or after that message to and ask for clarity and clarification and any additional questions. The biggest failure that I've had is the assumption that just because I write something down, it doesn't necessarily mean that people understand it. And so I've gone many, many years of, because I'm the manager, the boss, that whatever I say is understood. And then I found out that everything that I said was misunderstood. And so then I got mad at people because they didn't follow instructions. And then I got confused because I thought I was clear and I wasn't. So now I triple check myself, where I write it down in a Slack message, I make a Loom video about it, and then I have a conversation with them about it. Because I'm working with people not in an office. I'm working with people global all across the world, different cultures, different barriers, everything. And I need to make sure that what I need done and what is best for the business is done exactly the way that it needs to be done. Now, it can be interpreted different ways and it can be done better by other people, but the foundation should be the same. And so what I do now is I write a message, I create a video, I send it to them, and then I have a conversation with them about it to ask for clarity. And then once that is confirmed, then I feel more confident knowing that the job will get done the way that it needs to be done. And so if you're building a team, I would implore very similar structure to ensure that you don't waste time explaining it 1700 times, because that is the killer for any business. If you don't have that level of clarity and communication, you're going to waste so much time on dumb conversations that are going to make your head spin and lose your hair and turn your hair gray. So just be clear up front.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jonathan. It was lovely to have you.
Thank you.